Not all revolutions start with gunfire. Some begin with quiet cargo. On a gray July afternoon, rifles landed in Howth, secrets wrapped in sea mist, as volunteers vanished into the hills like shadows. They called it gun running. But for Ireland, it felt like destiny arriving in a wooden box. Home rule had a heartbeat now, echoing in steel. British troops watched, too late to stop it. The King's own march homeward, sour and silent. Down O'Connell Street, toward the Liffey's Bend, where fate awaited in a narrow lane. Bachelor's Walk was no battlefield, just cobbled stone, shops, and Dubliners out for Sunday breath. No one knew the fury that followed. A storm not from sky, but from uniform and bayonet. It happened in a blink. Jeers, shouts, boots pounding stone. Then rifles were raised where laughter had lived. No warning, no mercy. A child stumbled. A shopkeeper froze. Mary Duffy fell first, her blood-staining Irish stone, before history could explain itself. It wasn't just the bullets, it was the double standard. Unionists had smuggled guns too, but faced no fury, no bayonets, no blood on quiet streets. Not just in the crowd, but in the marrow of Irish belief. Trust drained from the empire, like color from a wound. A line had been crossed. Bachelor's Walk was quiet again, but never the same. Mothers remembered, poets wrote, and young hearts began to drift toward revolution. 1916 was still 2 winters away, but Dublin was already bleeding in protest. 30 wounded, 3 dead, not rebels, not militants, just Dubliners, caught between empire and echo. The soldiers walked on, no charges, no questions, just silence, the kind that grows bitter, layer by layer, year by year. Not every uprising has a battlefield. Some are born in shadows, in footnotes, in the cracked stones where history forgot to look. But Ireland remembers. 2 years passed in quiet fury. Dublin wore grief like lace, fragile but threaded deep. What began on cobblestones soon moved behind stone walls. As resistance learned to write, the rifles of Bachelor's Walk echoed still, not in gunpowder, but in ink and verse. Ireland was whispering now, but would not stay silent. Kilmainham holds no echoes. Its walls swallow sound, just as they once swallowed men. In May 1916, the air was thick, not with smoke, but with something final. Padraig Pearse wrote in the half-light, his pen steady, his words trembling. A brother's love, a nation's breath. He signed not just his name, but his goodbye. James Connolly couldn't stand. Gangrene crept through his leg, but his mind marched still. They propped him in a chair, and still he faced the firing line. Thomas MacDonagh dreamed in verse. His final letter read like a psalm. He wrote of children, of mist, of Ireland as more than a place, a song unfinished. They did not cry, they did not plead, but they wrote, oh, how they wrote, sending love like flares through fog. Kilmainham became a lighthouse of grief. The bodies were buried, the letters kept close. Kilmainham's stones still hum with those words, a revolution written in candlelight and carried by memory. No monument could hold it. No anthem could sing it whole, yet the nation knew, from those ashes rose a fire, that no empire could smother. Children grew up speaking their names. Pierce, Connolly, MacDonald, not as heroes, but as pages in a story. Ireland refused to stop telling. Rebellion is not always loud. Sometimes it begins with a quiet goodbye, written in a cell, and answered by history. Ash fell softly on Dublin that summer, not from flame, but from memory. The jail doors closed, but the words stayed warm, carried across fields, across oceans, toward the next reckoning, from ink-stained cells to chapel steps, from martyr's breath to mother's hymn. Ireland stitched its wound into a flag still unfolding. The ships left quietly, from Cove, from Galway, carrying Irish hearts across waves. Too wide to imagine, they packed potatoes and prayers. Letters followed them, thin sheets, thick grief. Mothers wrote of mass attendance, of missing boots, missing sons, and the way silence sounds. In New York, the words arrived, months late, sometimes never. Dearest Ma, tell Sean. Hope inked in trembling hands, lost to salt and time. Every envelope was a bridge, between Donegal and Boston, between famine and the fight to live. Paper held what the sea tried to take. Memory. Not all who left came back, but the letters did, stacked in trunks, tucked behind holy cards, telling Ireland its story, from away. Some letters were never answered. Ma waited by the hearth, but the boat never returned. Absence writes louder than presence, especially in Ireland. In Boston, work consumed the sons. 6-day shifts, cold hands, no time to write, but always time to remember. Back in Mayo, the silence deepened. A mother's faith turned inward. Rosaries said for boys long gone, whose names remained, but whose voices vanished. Some letters arrived decades late, creased, crumbled, like ghosts in the post. They told of weddings, loss, but never the moment missed. Ireland kept every page, even the blank ones, because even silence has a story, and absence leaves its own kind of ink. The letters didn't just survive, they multiplied. Grandchildren read them, voices of those who'd vanished, now louder than ever. Museums framed the words. School children copied them, not as relics, but as reminders. That identity can live between commas. The emigrants are gone, but they write still, through names reclaimed, soil retouched, and stories retold. Roots aren't always buried. Sometimes they rest, unfolded paper in cedar boxes, whispering through generations, until someone answers the echo. Ireland remembers the ones who left, and the ones who stayed, because in every letter, sent, saved, or lost, a piece of home remained. The letters grew silent, but Ireland kept speaking, not in envelopes, but in echoes, through stone, through ritual, through words older than empire. The voices that wrote now slept, but new voices were stirring, not in cities, but in sacred places, where language was once worship. Ireland once sang its lessons, not in classrooms, but in meadows, where bardic schools taught law, lore, and language, with rhythm alone. Poets were professors, judges, story keepers. Their verses held history, in rhyme, not ink. Then came conquest, and with it, chalk, punishment, and translation. The crown didn't just take land, it took breath. Irish became dangerous, a language of rebels, of ghosts. Children were taught to forget, to unlearn the music of their birth. Verses vanished from valleys. Names changed, tongues bent to foreign shapes, until even dreams spoke with an accent.
Now, boy, conjugate the verb to be in the present indicative, and do not falter.
English became law, not just in courts, But in cradles, Irish mothers whispered two tongues, one for memory, one for survival. In schoolrooms, silence was punishment. Languages were weighed, and Irish came up wanting. Priests told parishioners to speak English. Shopkeepers changed their signs. Gaelic slipped into shadow, a language now spoken in defiance. Or not at all. Children forgot the lilt, forgot the poems, forgot the taste of words that once made rain sound sacred. Ireland was being reworded, but some carried it still. In kitchens, in songs sung to cows, in phrases too stubborn to die. It began softly, in Gaeltacht valleys, where old words refused to die. Children learned again not to rebel, but to remember. Poets rose again, but not on stages, on fields, in kitchens, in whispered verse that carried memory in every syllable. Radio found the rhythm. Songs returned in native tongue. The words danced again, not just in books, but in mouths unashamed. Irish became law again. Schools taught its magic, not as requirement, but as inheritance. The tongue once banished, now blesses. Not perfect, not everywhere, but enough to say, we remember. The tongue, once buried, rose again in rain, but Ireland's voice lives elsewhere too, in stones carved by faith, and altars older than kings. Language returned, but belief had never left. Even when prayers were punished, Ireland knelt, not in fear, but in rhythm. Before churches had spires, Ireland prayed to wind and water. Stone circles sang, and each hill held a name, whispered like blessing. Then saints came walking, no swords, just scripture and sandals. Faith turned wild, but didn't die. It changed rhythm. Skellig Michael rose like an altar. Monks carve homes into cliff and storm. Their prayers join gulls, echoing above waves that knew no kings. But belief brought rivalry. Pagan roots weren't erased, just buried beneath stone crosses and Latin chants. Ireland did not pick one god, it layered them. Saints walked over druid stones, and the soil whispered both names, without guilt. Faith once bloomed freely. Then came foreign pulpits, and prayers rewritten. Ireland knelt still, but now under watch. Protestant power crowned belief. Catholic rites went underground, whispered at hedgerows, taught by moonlight, guarded like grain. Altars were seized, crosses defaced. The old monastic paths, now marched by redcoats, bearing gospel and gun. Belief split families. One side baptized in Latin, the other in fear. Even graves bore witness, names lost beneath censored stone. But faith never fled. It morphed, it masked, it moved quietly, until it could speak again, and kneel without shame. The altars returned, but not to echo empires. They came back as whispers, as moss-covered promises, as pilgrimages without permission. Clonmacnoise still chants, not in voices, but in wind. Faith lives there, carved deep where silence becomes scripture. Belief is not perfection, it's memory held gently. Ireland didn't rebuild its temples, it remembered them by lighting candles in the corners, where history still kneels. Now tourists walk the paths, but the faithful never stopped. Every prayer at holy wells, every hymn in shadowed chapels, is a consecration of memory. Ireland didn't lose its altar. It carried it, in footsteps, stories, and the quiet conviction. That faith can be forgotten, but never erased. The bell stopped ringing. The altar stood silent. But Ireland's prayer never ended. It flowed beneath cairns and rivers, beneath names unspoken, and wounds left warm. We left memory on stone, but it followed us, in weathered fields, in whispered grief. Ireland's past didn't sleep, it walked. The hills hold secrets, names carved in lichen, footsteps layered in moss. No monument needed, just wind, and the way it remembers. Dolmens mark grief, not graves, but openings, gateways for sorrow, to become story. The land doesn't forget, it hums, with every rain-soaked footprint, every field named for heartbreak. Ireland whispers the weight of lives we never learned in school. Even silence speaks here, in fairy paths left untouched, in trees no one cuts, in fog that finds the old graves. Before we do, stone knows us, carries what we forget, not to haunt, but to hold. Ireland's soul isn't just in story, it's underfoot. The banshee didn't scream. She mourned, long before telegrams. She wailed for the fallen, with a grief so true. Even silence wept. Fairy paths weren't fantasy. They were warnings, places the living avoided, not from fear, but from respect. Selkies shed their skins, not to flee, but to love. Ireland told stories, where transformation wasn't curse, but choice. Folk tales weren't escape. They were explanation, for heartbreak, for hauntings, for the ache that history couldn't name. Ireland wept in stories, laughed too, because when truth was too heavy, it cloaked itself in legend. We carry the banshee, in how we mourn. We carry the rebel, in how we argue. We carry the myth, in how we love. Poets still speak, with haunted ink. Their verses echo, not what was, but what couldn't be said then. In Belfast murals, in Galway songs, in quiet accents abroad, Ireland's ghosts don't haunt. They harmonize. We say things without knowing, phrases passed down, gestures too old for origin. That's the inheritance, not property, but presence. The ghosts we carry don't weigh us down. They light the way. Ireland is not a graveyard of grief. It is a choir of quiet truths.